On the screen, I've opened up the template, which is titled Project Template. Now in this video, I'll be going through the various sections of this template, highlighting the basic functionalities, while also explaining how to use the template. Now once you open up the template, you're going to arrive on the first page, which is the employee information section. Now all sections in this template have been formatted identically. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the section title, which tells you at any point in time the section you're currently on. So notice it says employee information, so the user knows that this is where you document all employee information. To the right of this, we have a navigation pane made up of various thumbnails that can be used to navigate to the various sections of the template. The template is made up of 8 sections, and each section can be navigated to by simply clicking on the title. So for instance, if I want to go to the dashboard section, I simply click on dashboard and it takes me to that section of the template. In the same way, I can go to my reports section, customers, projects, the employee section that we're just currently on, we call employee information, the expenses section, the job sheet, and the drop-down lists. Now, as I said earlier on in the video, I'm going to go through all the sections, that's the 8 individual sections, one after the other. I'm going to start with the employee section first, then move to other sections. So going back to the employee section by simply clicking on the tab, employees, takes me to that section. Now to the right of the label, that's the section title, we have 2 buttons, the Add New and the Delete Selection button. These buttons are used to add and remove employee information from this particular section. Below this, we have a data table made up of several columns with various column headers, and these are the respective attributes that the user is expected to supply for every employee. So first, you indicate the employee's name. Next, you indicate the job title, that's the title of the job the employee currently does. Next, you indicate the hourly rates, that's if your employees are paid per hour, the phone number, email, and address. Now to supply information, you simply click on the first blank field. So notice as I've clicked on this field, this cell is currently highlighted. I can now go ahead and supply the employee name. For this example, I'm just going to type rows random. Now to move to the next field, which in this case is the job title field, I simply make use of the tab key on my keyboard. So the tab key moves me from my current field to the next field on the right. So notice as I press the tab key, now the next cell, which is the job title cell, is now highlighted. And now I can indicate the title, that's the job title for this particular employee. So let's assume that this is a carpenter under my employment. To move to the next field where I indicate the hourly rate, I simply use the tab key. Now, since this is a projects template, it's assumed that you undertake projects for various companies. And while undertaking projects, you have several employees under your employment that perform different functions. So for instance, your carpenter can be paid maybe 1,000 Naira per hour, depending on the number of hours that they work for you. So you simply type in 1,000, you move to the next field, and Excel automatically formats that to the Naira currency. Next, you indicate the phone number. Pressing my tab key to move to the next field, I indicate the email address and the residential address. Now, all the fields here are optional. So in the event, for instance, this employee, if you don't have the email address, you can leave that blank. Go ahead and move to the next field and supply the address. Now, I've successfully entered the address, phone, hourly rate, and the job title for rows random. Now to add a new employee, you simply click the Add New button, and as you click on it, you notice Excel will automatically insert a blank new row beneath the last row. So notice as I click the Add New button, we have a new row inserted, and you notice that the border at the bottom moves down, and Excel automatically highlights the first field. So now I can repeat the process by entering the employee name, pressing my tab key to move to the next field, entering the job title. For instance, let's assume this is the driver. Is paid 700 per hour, and then I enter the phone number. So the user simply repeats this process to enter all employee information. So now I've documented 2 employees in the database. For this demonstration, I'm going to use only these 2 employees. However, there's no limits to the number of employees you can add. You simply click the Add New button. Excel inserts a blank new row and automatically highlights the first field. You supply the first value and make use of your tab key to move to subsequent fields. Now, just like you add values, you might equally want to delete a particular employee record. Now, to delete a record, throughout this template, it's a 2-step process. Now, as I said at the start, every record entered into this data table is represented by a row. So for instance, rows random information is represented by the first row. Chudi's information is represented by the second row, and so on. So if you want to delete a particular row, for instance, this blank row I just entered, you simply need to click on any cell in the row. So you can click on the employee name cell, the job title cell, hourly rate cell, it really doesn't matter. Just click on any cell in that particular row, click the delete selection button. Excel is going to ask, are you sure you want to delete this record? If you click on yes, it's going to go ahead and delete that particular record. let me repeat that again. For instance, if I want to delete this record with Chudi Aranda, all I need to do is simply click on any cell in this particular row. So I can click on the first cell, the second, the third, it doesn't matter. Once I click delete selection, it's going to ask me, am I sure I want to delete this record? It's equally going to tell you the employee's name. So if you're on the wrong row, you can simply click on no and then nothing happens. But if you click on yes, it goes ahead to delete that particular record. So that's a summary of the first section. This is where you document all of your employee information. Simply enter your name, job title, hourly rates, and other contact information. Now next we move to the customer section. So it works the same way as the employee section. Just like we clicked on the employee name, we simply click on the customer label. So once you click on customers, it takes you to the customer section. You notice it has an identical formatting. In the upper left hand corner, we have the section title that tells the user this is where you document customer information. To the right of this, we have two buttons: to add a new customer and to delete an existing customer. Below this, we have the data table with 4 column headers where you indicate the customer name, the address, the phone number, and the email. It works exactly the same way. You simply click on the first blank field and go ahead and supply the customer name. Once you're done, you make use of your tab key to move to the next field. You indicate the customer address. Pressing the tab key, you indicate the phone number. And then lastly, you indicate the email address. So now I've successfully entered customer information. I've indicated the name, address, phone, and email. To add another, I simply click the add new button and I repeat the process. Now for this demonstration, I'm not going to add another customer. I'm simply going to delete this row I just added, but it works the same way as I demonstrated in the employee section. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the delete selection button to get rid of this row. I'm going to click on yes, so Excel deletes that row automatically. So now I have just one customer row. The next section I'm going to go to would be the project section. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this template is used to document all of your projects. So whenever you get a new project order from a client, you simply go to the project section. Well, first of all, you go to the customer section, you document the customer information. So it's assumed you have the customer's name and probably the phone number and the email. The address might be optional. Next, you indicate the project. Here you give details of the project. So clicking on the project label goes to that particular section. Notice it's the same formatting. We have the section title and 2 buttons to add a new project and to delete an existing project. Now this table, that's the data table below, has multiple columns and they all relate to a particular project. So first, the project ID is a formula generated field. So Excel will automatically generate a unique project ID using the customer information and the request date. So the first field you use here is the request date. But since this data table has several columns, notice if I scroll to the right, we still have additional columns here. It becomes quite unproductive and annoying to keep using the tab key to navigate across fields. So a data form has been added to simplify the process of entering data. So once you click on the first button here, you notice it pops up an Excel form, and this form provides a user-friendly way to supply data to this data table, but without having to see all the extended columns. So it's a more user-friendly way of supplying values. So by default, Excel will enter today's date as the request date and the start date. So for every project, it's assumed that the request date is the date the client calls you to request for the project to be conducted, and the start date is the assumed start date of the project. So for instance, the client can call me today, so that's today's date, and the clients might need me to start the project next week. So this is going to be next week's date. So I'm just going to change this to January, and I'm going to make this the 3rd of January. So let's just assume this is the date the project is supposed to start. So as I said, Excel by default will put in today's date, but you can modify the date portion, the month portion, or the year portion. So you can change any of the 3 portions of the date. So now I've indicated that the customer called me today, which is the 25th, and the project is to start on the 3rd of January 2017. Next, I indicate the customer that is ordering this project. Now, this is a drop-down list to save you from typing, and it's going to list all customers as indicated in the customer section. So that's why at the start, I mentioned that you should first enter the customer detail before moving on to the project section to enter the project detail. So notice that I click the drop-down list, we have only one customer, Mary Roots, and that's the only customer displayed. If I go ahead and cancel this data entry form, and I add another customer just to demonstrate how the drop-down list automatically updates, I'm going to click the add new button and I'm going to enter a new customer. Okay, and I'm just going to leave the address field blank. I'm just going to add a phone number and an email address. Okay, so I've added 3 attributes for the next customer. So now if I go back to my project section and I click on the user form, you notice that if I click the drop-down list by customers, we now have the 2 customers. So as you add additional customers to the customer section, the template will automatically update this drop-down list. So now I'm going to go ahead and select maybe roots. I'm going to change this back to the first. That's the first month. And next, we indicate the location as a project location. So for instance, is it Abuja? Is it Lagos? For this, I'm just going to type in Abuja. Next, we indicate the project type. Now, later on in the drop-down list section, I'm going to show you how you can modify the contents of this drop-down list. So by default, I just added some random project types, but later on, these values can be modified using the drop-down list section. So pretty much it's assumed that every project you undertake is related to a particular project type. So for instance, you can do hardware projects, softwares. Now, as I said, this is modifiable. So for instance, if your project types are events, so for example, this can be birthdays, this can be weddings. So pretty much this is modifiable to suit your specific industry. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and select deployment and install. So moving to the next field, I indicate the project manager. That's the individual that would oversee this project. Now, this is an optional field. So if you don't use project managers, you can go ahead and leave that blank. And lastly, you indicate the description of this project. So for instance, if you're supposed to, install 5 new transformers, construct 5 pillar posts, pretty much you can go ahead and type all descriptions. That's all details pertaining to this particular project. So as you can notice, this is a very wide field, so there's no limit to the number of characters that you can add. So you pretty much type all the description, that's as much detail as possible with regards to this project. So once you're done typing it all, you go ahead and click the enter work order button, and Excel is going to transfer this data to the data table. Once the process is complete, Excel is going to tell you the project has been added. Once you click on OK, we should see the project listed on the first row. So there we go. So it tells you the project ID, the request dates, the customer, the type, and all other information. So as I said, the project ID is formally generated, so it automatically generates data using the request date and also the customer name. So I've listed all the values here. You notice it starts MAR, that's the first 3 letters of the customer's first name. And then we have the last 2 of the year, that's the last 2 digits of the year. And then we have the hyphen there. So all the details have been entered. If I scroll to the right, you notice that we equally have 3 additional columns here. Now these columns are formula generated. So later on, when you add expenses related to this particular project and you add jobs, it's going to automatically calculate the total labor that you've expended in this particular project, the total materials you've purchased as indicated in the expenses section, and the overall total of the project. So these 3 columns are formula generated, and they're going to automatically update later on as I demonstrated when I add additional values to other sections. So now I've successfully indicated the project ID. So I simply clicked on the button up here. It popped up the form and I filled all the values. Now I'm going to click on cancel as I don't want to add a new project. Delete selection works the same way. You simply click on any cell in that particular row, click delete. It's going to tell you the project ID and the customer name. If this is indeed the project you want to delete, you click yes. I'm going to go ahead and click no. So that's a summary of the project summary section. For this demonstration, I'm going to add only 1 project, and I'm going to work with only 1 project. But as I said, there's no limit to the number of projects you can add. You can use this continuously for multiple years. Now I've gone through the employee section, the customer section, now the project section. The next section we need to go through is the job sheets. Now the job sheet is where you allocate jobs to a particular employee. Now the template has been designed in 2 ways. You can allocate jobs for a particular employee. So if you make use of only employees for all of your tasks, you can assign them here. And also if you make use of contractors, later on in the section you can go, that's a report section, where you can add contractors to the database. So the same way you add your employees here, if you make use of contractors, there's a section that equally you can document all contractor information. So now I'm going to go to the job sheet section. Now this is where you allocate jobs. In the upper section, you can get information for a particular project. So later on, when you have multiple projects, if you want to quickly extract summary data for a particular project, you simply select the project ID here. Notice if I click, it shows me only 1 project ID because I have only 1 project in my project section. Later on, when I add additional projects, this drop-down list will show all of the projects. So once you click on a particular project, it's going to automatically give you summary information, your request date, the customer name, the phone number, the type, and a brief description. So you can automatically already see the summary for this particular project. Then you can go ahead at the bottom to allocate jobs. So if, for instance, for this particular project, you're going to assign some jobs to your employees. First, you indicate the date. I'm just going to use today's dates. Now the date should be entered in this format: the day, the month, the year. Once you're done, you make use of your tab key. You indicate the project ID. So it's listed here. You can simply now select the project ID. Next, you indicate the worker type. Now, as I said, the template is designed to accommodate two worker types, either an employee or a contractor. Now, we haven't gone through the contractor section. We're going to go through that later on in the video. For this demonstration, we're going to use only your employee section. But once you click on employee and you tab away, the template is going to display all employees in your database. So we currently have 2 employees. Notice we have Rose Random and Trudy Aruna. If to say I selected contractors here and I tab away, you will notice that the drop-down list displays nobody because we haven't added any contractors to our database. So this drop-down list here is dynamic. The values that are going to be displayed is subject to your selection here. Notice if I change this back to employees and I tab to the next field, notice now it displays my 2 employees, Rose and Judy. However, if I change this from employee to contractor and I tab away, it's going to be blank because we haven't added any contractor to the contractor section. So I'm going to go ahead and select my employees for this demonstration. And I'm going to make the first Rose Random. Now, once I select Rose Random and I tab away, next I need to indicate the number of hours I want to employ Rose Random for. So let's assume Rose Random is supposed to work for me for 3 hours. So I simply entered hours in this format, the hours, semicolon, the minutes. So 3 hours will be 3, semicolon, 00. So I've indicated 3 hours. Once I tab away, the template will automatically extract the hourly rates for Rose Random using the data I supplied in the employee section. So recall that in the employee section, I indicated that Rose Random is to be paid 1,000. So the template has automatically entered 1,000 and automatically calculated the total cost. So to do that for you automatically. Now the next field is a flat rate. It's possible that for some of your jobs, you might not want to use an hourly rate. Maybe for instance, you have an agreement with Rose Random that for this particular task, I'm going to pay you 2,500. So I'm not going to pay you on an hourly rate. I'm just going to give you a flat rate for the job. What you do in this scenario here is that you go ahead and enter the flat rate here. So if I go ahead now and enter 2,500 here, what I'm telling Excel is that I want to pay Rose Random a flat rate and not the hourly rate. So notice it tells me here that I entered an hourly and a flat rate. So I need to choose one. So if I want to pay Rose Random only 2,500, all I need to do is to delete the values I entered here. So I simply delete the hourly and the rates. So now the template is going to make use of only the flat rate of 2,500 for any job I list on this particular row. Notice that the error alert is gone. So the template gives you the opportunity to choose between an hourly payment and a flat payment. So if I want to pay Rose Random now per hour, I simply delete this flat rate and I go back to the hourly section. Then I enter the number of hours and the template will then recalculate for me the total cost. So now the template is going to use 3,000. So I have the choice of either using 3,000 or overriding the value by entering a flat rate. So I'm going to make use of the hourly rate. Next, I indicate the client charge. Now, what this does is every company does markup. So for instance, you're going to pay Rose Random 3,000 for this particular job that we're going to describe very soon. So what are you going to mark up to the customer? So you can decide to, for instance, put a certain percentage markup, for instance, 3,000, and you're going to charge the client 4,000 for this particular service. So now that means that you're going to gain or you're going to have a profit of 1,000. So the client charge is where you indicate what you're going to charge the clients for this particular service, which is going to be a markup of this particular value. The bonus field is an optional field. And lastly, you indicate the brief description. So Rose Random, what do you want Rose Random to do? You can ask Rose Random to, buy wood 3 layers, construct platform for transformers. So I'm just writing some random text that might not make any sense, but here pretty much you enter the description of the job you want Rose Random to perform, which is related to this particular project. So once you're done, Excel has automatically recorded or documented this particular job. Now, if I go back to my project section, and for this particular project, if I scroll to the right, you notice that now it tells me label a total of 4,000. Total 4,000. So the template has already automatically recognized that in the job sheet, we've allocated a job for this particular project. 4,000 is what we said is a client charge. So the overall now is 4,000 because we haven't purchased any materials. Now, if we go back to the job section, you can add multiple jobs for a particular project. So I can click the add new button. It's going to insert a blank new row. In the same way, I can enter today's date. Tab away. Next, I select the order ID. We have only one project ID. So order, this is project ID, just as order. And next, I indicate employee. I select the employee that's associated, which is the Judy, and I enter the number of hours. So for instance, 5 hours. Recall this is our driver. Now it's going to automatically enter the hourly rate and the total rate. So recall the 700 we put, so it has calculated this. But let's assume that for this particular employee, for this particular job, remember this is a driver, we just want to pay a flat rate of 3,000 instead of 3,500. So we have an agreement with this employee. So all I need to do in this scenario is simply to remove the hours and the hourly rate, and then I go ahead and enter a flat rate here of the 3,000. So what this basically means is that Excel is going to charge, or this employee is going to be paid this particular amount as opposed to the flat rate using the hourly rate entered in the employee section. So you have that flexibility. You can either make use of the hourly format or you can make use of the flat rate format. Next, you indicate the client charge. Now, so we're charging 3,000, or we're paying this employee 3,000. So what are you going to charge the client? So let's assume we're going to charge client 3,500. So we're going to make a profit of 500 for this particular service. And next we indicate a brief description. So we just indicate a summary of what we expect this driver to do. So this can just be drive, customer to site and workers to field. Let's just assume this is a brief description of what we expect this particular employee, Judy, to perform. So now we've added 2 jobs for this particular project. Now if we go to our project section, and we scroll to the right where we can see our aggregate totals, you'll notice that now it tells us labor is 7,500. So that's automatically added the 3,000, the 2 fees, that's the 4,000 for the first labor, and the 3,500, giving us a total of 7,500. So going back to the job sheet, recall the client charged the first, we're going to charge 4, the second we're going to charge 3,500. So it automatically aggregates that for you. Now this section, that's the job summary, is where you indicate all labor expenses. Now it's understandable that it's possible you're going to hire some contractors. So not all jobs will be performed by your employees, and so that's why you have the options here of selecting contractors. And later on, as I said, I'm going to take you to the report section where you can be able to see all contractors, or where you can be able to store contractors, entering their charge and their name and other details in the database. So that's a summary of how you use this section. Pretty much at the top, you simply indicate the project. It's going to display all important details pertaining to that project. Then at the bottom, you indicate the particular employees or contractors and the job that they're expected to perform. You simply click the add new button. It inserts a blank new row. You supply the date, the order ID, you indicate if it's an employee or a contractor, and then you select the employee name or contractor name and other values. So the client charge is the charge you're going to charge the customer. That's the amount you're going to charge the customer for each individual job. So this template enables you add a markup for each individual labor service. In the same way, you can add a markup for each individual expense. So next, we're going to go to the expense section by clicking on the label here, and it takes you to that section. It works exactly the same way. This is where you document expenses. This is where you document expenses and materials pertaining to a project or pertaining to your running cost in the company. So this template has multiple reports that enables you to see on a monthly basis the total income and profits that you've made. So here, for instance, if you have running costs, for instance, your rent, electricity, and other business related costs, you enter it here. If you equally have expenses related to a particular order, so for instance, this order, that's this project we just created for Mary Roots, if you're going to buy 1 or 2 materials for this particular project, you equally enter it in the expenses section. To do that, you simply click on the first blank field and enter values. First, you indicate the date, make use of your tab key. Next, you indicate the order ID. So right now we have only one order, that's only one project, and that's the only project listed. Later on, all of your projects, as in the project section, are all going to be listed here. Simply click on the project if this expense is related to a project. So let's assume, first of all, we're going to buy some pieces of wood, for Rose Random, one of our employees. So we've selected the order. So we're telling Excel that this expense is related to this particular order. Next, we select the expense category. Now, by default, some categories have been added. These options can, however, be modified. Later on in the drop-down list section, I'm going to show you how to modify the contents here, but these are just the default categories. Or what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to the drop-down list section and just show you how to do that. So right now, notice the last category we have is the bonus category. We have the training to the bonus. To modify the content, you simply go to the drop-down list, and under expense category, these are the options. So I can change, instead of training, for instance, I can use, I can just go and type wood, or I can just type project materials. Okay, so I've modified the first content. You can modify any of the contents here. These are just default values for demonstration purposes. And you can equally add new categories. So for instance, here I can go ahead and type in miscellaneous. If I go back to my expenses section and I click the drop down list here, you notice we now have project materials and miscellaneous. So you can modify the contents of this drop down list using the drop down list section. I'm going to go ahead and select project materials as we're purchasing wood for this particular project. Next, I can go ahead here and type 3 by 3 wood, So I can go ahead and type 3 by 3 wood. And then the quantity, so let's assume the carpenter needs to buy 10 units or 10 pieces of 3 by 3 wood. So I go ahead and type in 10. Next, I indicate the unit cost as the cost of each plank of wood. So let's assume each plank of wood costs 5,000. So the template will automatically calculate the total, which will be 5,000 times 10, which should give me 50,000. And next, I indicate the selling price. So since this is associated with a project, here I indicate what am I going to charge the customer for this particular service. So let's assume that I'm just going to add 2,000. So I'm just going to make the selling price 52,000. So here I've indicated pretty much a profit of 2,000 for this particular purchase. But now if we go back to our project section, you notice that now the labor now has 52. So that's automatically identified that we've indicated materials we purchased with regards to this particular project, and the total aggregates the two together. That's the labor plus the materials. So these three subtotals you are going to automatically update as you assign jobs to your employees or contractors, and also as you purchase materials for this particular project. So next, we can go ahead and click the add new button, and let's say we're going to buy fuel because our driver needs to drive around, and I'm just going to use today's date, but this date can be any date, but for this demonstration I'm just going to use today's date for all of my demonstrations. Next, I indicate the project because I need to associate it with this particular project. Then I choose the category, so this can just be miscellaneous or travel, and then I'm just going to call this fuel. Move to the next field. How many gallons am I going to buy? Let's say I'm going to buy 120 gallons, and each gallon I think right now is 145, and it's going to multiply the two together, tell me the total amount I'm going to spend on fuel, which is 17,400. Let's assume I'm going to charge the clients 20,000. So this way, for each expense, that's for each job, for each materials you're purchasing, you're already doing a markup here. That way, for each of your projects, you're sure that you're going to generate more, you're going to earn more than you actually expended. So now we've added 20,000 to this particular project. So if you go to the project, it tells us the total here. You notice it's now 72, which is 52 plus 20, giving you 72, then the total 79. So this just shows how interconnected all sections are. It makes it convenient for you. So as you make expenses, you simply just come here, click the add new button, and indicates the project name or the project ID here. And as you employ people in the job sheet section, you simply indicate. So for instance, if you want to give Rose Random another job in this same order, you simply enter the dates, you indicate the project, and this is equally going to be an employee. And I'm equally going to select Rose Random. Oh, I chose Contractor, so select employee there. Then I'm going to make this Rose Random. And this amount, I'm going to give you a flat rate. So I'm just going to leave all these fields blank. I'm just going to go ahead to the flat rate and enter a flat rate of 2,000. And I'm going to charge the client 2,500. So I make 500 from this particular service. And the details can just be spraying all wood. Let's assume that I'm going to pay 2,000 to spray all the wood that was purchased earlier on. So now this additional 2,500 is now going to be added to the project section for that particular project. So notice the labor is now 10,000. So the 7,500 before plus the 2,500 we just added gives us a total of 10, and the aggregate total equally reflects that. So it's just convenience to keep adding your expenses. Now in the expenses section, as I mentioned earlier on, you can add any kind of expenses. So project related expenses and also business expenses. So let's assume that I'm equally going to pay my rent. So if you're adding a business expense, you simply leave this blank. So notice that's why in front of order ID it says optional. So if the expense is not related to a particular order, it's just a business expense, you just go ahead and leave this blank. And here I can go ahead and type rent. Is that one of my options? Okay, it's not. So I can, in my drop down list, I can add rent. You can equally add other of your expenses. So you can change this, for instance, to electricity. You can modify the contents of your drop down list. So going back to my expenses section, now we should have rent that I just added. and this can just be September 2017 rents, or it makes more sense if I write December, since today we're in December. And this is going to be only one because you're paying for only 1 month. And let's assume that my rent for a particular month is, I don't know, 120,000. Let's just assume this is how much I pay for rent, business rent. And since I'm not selling it, you equally leave the selling price blank. So the selling price is only associated if you're going to resell to the customer if the expense is related to a particular project. Okay, so now I've indicated that we're going to 120 from the money I generated is going to be used for rent, and this is a business expense. So that's a summary of these sections. So the employee section, you document employees. The customer section, you document all of your customers. The expenses section, you indicate all expenses, business expenses and project expenses. The job sheet section, you allocate jobs to employees for a particular project. And the project section, you enter all of your projects. So now we're going to go to our reports dashboard. So we simply click on the reports label and it takes us to that section of the template. So once you click on it, you notice that here holds 5 thumbnails to navigate to 5 additional sections of the template. The last section is the section we're going to go through first, which is the contractor section. This is just where you had contractor information. Now, this should have been added to the navigation pane up here because it works the same way as the employee and the customers, but we're just going to make this is balanced as 8. So if I added it, that would have made it 9, and then it's not evenly balanced. So that was why I just decided to add it to the reports dashboard. So it's not a report. It's one of the data entry fields where you supply all of your contractor information. The other reports are automatically generated. They aggregate totals for you. So the first, for instance, you can be able to select a particular project and to show a detailed breakdown. So now notice that for our project, for instance, here we have the aggregate totals to the right. So we know the total labor and the total material charge, but we don't see the breakdown here. In the same way, if I go to my job sheets, I can see only the labor breakdown here. I can't see the expense breakdown. So later on, when I have multiple projects, they're all going to be listed here. So this report enables you to see only labor expenses and only material expenses related to a particular project. So you can select a project and to automatically display only related labor and related material expenses. The next report, job details, enables you to get details for a particular employee. So for instance, notice in our job sheet, for Rose Random, we had 2 job tasks. It's possible that for a particular employee, you might have 5 or 6 job tags, and they're going to be listed together with other employees, which makes it clustered. So this report enables you conveniently select an employee, and it's going to list only jobs that you've allocated to that particular employee. So it's a nice way that you can even print it out and give to the employee so they know all the jobs they're expected to perform for a particular project. The worker summary enables you get detailed summary for a particular worker. Now this works for employees, whereas this works for contractors and employees. So that's the major difference between the two. Next, we have our monthly income. This enables you see the total amount you've generated on a monthly basis in terms of income, the total amount you've spent on a monthly basis, and the total profit. That's the difference between the two. And lastly, the contractors is where we enter contractor information. So I'm first going to start from the last. So once I click on it, you notice it looks just like the customer and the employee section. You simply add contractors. So this, for instance, can be, I'm just going to call this contractor 1, as I can't really think of a better name right now. Job title, this can be a welder. Let's assume that I'm going to outsource the welding part of the job because I don't have a welder under my employment. And I'm going to pay the welder, maybe it charges $4,000 per hour to bring his machine and do everything together. So I'm going to enter the welder's phone number here. And if they have an email and an address, you enter that there. For this demonstration, I'm just going to leave them blank. And I'm going to add another contractor. Click on the Add New button, insert a new row. And I'm going to make this contractor 2, very generic names. This is going to be, this can be a cleaner. You say someone that cleans up the premises. And I pay the person $500 per hour. And then this is the person's number. Okay, so I've added 2 contractors now. So notice if I now go back to my job sheet section, recall that before, I'm going to click the Add New button. When we selected contractor, there was no listed worker. But now since we've added 2 contractors to the report section, if I enter, for instance, today's date, and I select this project, if I tab away and I indicate contractor, tabbing away, you notice that now we should see the 2 contractors here. So this drop-down list is dynamic. The values that are going to be displayed is subject to your selection here. So notice we selected contractors, so it shows me contractor 1 and 2. If If I change this from contractor to employee and I tab away, we should see rows random and Chudi Arana. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and select the contractor just for this demonstration. And I'm going to make this contractor 1. That's the welder. And let's assume that the welder is supposed to work for 10 hours. Recall that I said the hours should be entered, the hours, a semicolon, then the minutes. Now once I tab away, the template will automatically extract the hourly rate, which should be, I think, 4,000, and then the total. So it's going to do that for you automatically. If you want to pay a flat rate, you simply delete the values here and enter a flat rate. And here you indicate what it is that you're going to charge the client. So let's assume you're going to charge the client 50,000. So you're going to make a profit of 10,000 in this particular service. And here you're going to indicate a brief description. So this can just be to mount the transformers. I'm just trying to think of, descriptions that actually make sense. So mount the 5 transformers. Okay, so that's the welder's job. They're going to mount it by welding some stuff together. So now I've added this job 5,000. So now if we do go to our project section, we should see that the total is increased now to 132. So the labor charge has gone up by the 40,000 we just added. So this will continue aggregating regardless of the number of employees that are assigned labor tax for the project or the number of materials. So that's how the contractor section works. Recall we went to the reports section, then we clicked on contractors. So once you add a contractor here with your hourly rates, payments, and phone number, it's going to automatically be available in the job sheet section. So the next report we're going to go through now is the project breakdown. So simply clicking on the thumbnail opens up that section of the template. Now here you notice that this is a report. So what that means is that you don't do any form of data entry here. You simply select values from a drop-down list. Notice it tells you select project ID. If you follow the arrow and you click on the cell, all projects are going to be listed. We have only one. Now once you select the project and you tab away, the template will automatically display the name of the customer, the phone, the address. So you're going to automatically obtain customer information from the customer section. Next is going to obtain job details information from the project section. So automatically other details about the project, the description, the start date, request date, the location. And below it's going to automatically display all labor and all materials for this particular project. So it tells you the breakdown of all labor for this particular project that we indicated here. If I scroll to the bottom, it tells you all expenses. Recall we have only 2 expenses, the fuel that we purchased and the wood. And if we scroll to the extreme bottom, you have the labor total. So it does a subtotal of all labor expenses. Notice if I select this, the total is in this 60,000. We can see at the bottom of the screen here. And here equally, if I select the 2, the total is in this 72. So it tells you the grand total that the client is expected to pay. Now this report is useful as it can equally be printed out for the customer. You notice your logo is here. It has been set to fit on an A4 page. So if I go to my print preview, you notice that the margins are set on the left and on the right. So you notice the margins are set. So this can be printed out. This can be saved as a PDF and emailed to the client. So this is a professional breakdown showing the clients the customer details, the job details, and also a breakdown of all labor expenses and all material expenses and the grand total at the bottom. Now, since this is a basic template, it can accommodate a total of 5 labor, that's 5 individual labor jobs, and 5 independent expenses. So the template can accommodate 5 for both categories. Okay, and it works as I said. All you need to do is just to indicate, select the project ID here, and it will automatically pull the customer data. Recall we indicated before that the customer's name is Ruth. This is the phone number, the address, and the email address. It's equally going to tell you the job details, the labor breakdown, and the material breakdown. So it's going to give you all those values by simply selecting the project ID. So that's the first report. It gives you, as it says, a detailed summary for each project. You select the project and you see a detailed breakdown showing you the overall charge to the clients and the breakdown in terms of the labor expenses and the material expenses. Next, we have the job details. Now, the job details, clicking on the thumbnail opens it up. This is really for the worker. So it's possible that if you're going to assign multiple tasks to a particular employee, it's always better before you start the project to generate a report that shows all the jobs you expect the worker to do and the total charge you're going to pay for all of it. And then you print it out and you give to them. So all you need to do here is, first of all, you indicate the worker type. Is this a contractor or is this an employee? So if you follow the arrow, select worker type, there's only 2 options. So it's either an employee you want to generate this report for or a contractor. If you select employee, next you indicate the worker. It's going to automatically display only employees you have. Recall there are only 2. Once you click on a particular employee, Next, you indicate the project ID because an employee can be associated with multiple projects. So if you want to see only projects related to this particular project for rows random, once you select the project, it's going to automatically display summary for this particular project and the total charge that you have to pay rows random with regards to this particular project. So notice it tells you the total charge is 5, and these are the 2 tasks that she's expected to perform. This is the project detail, the location, the start date, and if I go to the bottom, these are the only 2 jobs she's expected to do. And I can see this for, if I change this, for instance, from rows random to the second employee, you notice that once I select the project again, so this cell triggers the refresh of the template. So once I select it again, it refreshes the template. And you notice that now the job descriptions are going to change. Notice it says drive customer to site and workers to field. Only 3,000 is what I'm expected to pay. So it's going to tell you the summary here, and it's equally telling you the location, the start date, and the job description. I can equally change this from employee to contractor and see for the contractor 1. Once I select the project ID again, it refreshes the reports, and this should show me welding information, mount 5 transformers. Okay, and the total I'm supposed to pay him is 40,000. So this just enables you to see summary for a particular worker. You simply indicate the worker name, and the project ID. The next report is the worker summary. So clicking on this report opens it up. Now this report is a pivot table. So what that means is, you notice we have a refresh all button here. So this is the only report that needs to be refreshed. So before you open this report, simply click on this button here. It takes a little while to load. Excel is going to refresh all the reports. So now the process is complete. And now if I open up the reports, we should see the updated data. So this just enables you to see data for a particular year and month. Recall that this report here, we're able to see only jobs for a particular selected worker. So at a time, we can see only for one worker. It's going to display all the jobs that we've assigned to that particular worker. This report here on the other end enables you to select a particular year. So for instance, later on when you have projects across multiple years, you can indicate the specific year, the specific month. So for instance, if I want to see only projects or only jobs that I assigned in the month of December, it's going to show me only December. Now my database has only December. That's why only December is here. If I go to my job sheet, and just for demonstrative purposes, this would not make any practical sense. I'm just going to change from December to January. So now we have data across January and across December. Now if I go back to my reports and I refresh, recall I need to refresh to be able to get the updated data in my worker summary. Once the process is complete and I click on that particular report, you notice that now December is only showing 2 values. If I click here, now we should see January. Recall January wasn't here before. So as you have your 12 calendar months listed here, the 12 calendar months are equally going to be listed here. So now if I click only January and I click OK, you notice it shows me only January transactions, which are only 2. If I change this and I click December, it's going to show me only December transactions, which are only 2. So that you can be able to know for any particular month the total amount you paid for labor. So you paid 40,000 in terms of hourly pay and 2,000 is flat rate, a total of 42 in the month of December 2017. So this just enables you to see for a particular month all labor expenses. So you can be able to know that, for instance, in January, you paid a total of, so once it refreshes, 3,000 in terms of hourly pay and 3,000 in terms of flat rate. So this is the total amount you paid in the month of January for labor charge. So going back to my report, so that's this report here. Now the monthly reports, which is the most important reports out of all of the reports, enables you to really see your income and expenses. So once you click on it, this report doesn't need to be refreshed. All you need to do to trigger it is you simply enter the year. So notice it says enter year. And this pop-up tip, you can always click and drag it anywhere. So if it's disturbing you where it is, you can always click and drag to any location you prefer. So all I need to do is to enter the year. So 2017, for instance, once I click enter, it's going to automatically update. So for each calendar month, notice we have from January up until December. It's going to tell you the total income per month, the total expense, and if there's any profits. So let's confirm that this is correct. It tells us that in the month of January, we made 7,500. And we can confirm that if we go to our job sheet section, you notice that in January, the only 2 transactions we have was 4,000 and 3,500, giving us a total of 7,500. Going back to the reports, monthly income tells us we spent 6,000. Next, it tells us that the total expenses in the month of January is 6,000. We can equally confirm that because if we go to our job section, we paid these workers, even though we generated 7.5. We equally have to pay 6,000 because we paid 3,000 for the first employee and 3. So it calculates the total in terms of what you pay your customers and your employees, and the total in terms of what you get from your clients. And then it tells us that the profit when we subtract the 2 gives us 1.5. And you notice the chart here, it says the total income. This is a total income chart, so we can see 7,000. Now we don't have data for February, March, and other calendar months, so that's why they're 0. But later on, when you have data across the 12 calendar months, you can be able to watch the trend on the chart. Next, we have December. It tells us that in December, the total income was a bit over 124,000. We can confirm that because we can go to our job sheets. This is our December here. There's 2 transactions. We made 52,500 in terms of what the clients paid for labor. And if we go to our expenses, we notice an additional for the month of December, an additional 72. And if you add that together, that gives us the total we obtained there. So that's 72,000, which we made, plus 52,500. So 72 plus 52,500 gives us a total, which is 120. What was it again? Which is 124,500. And labor, which is what we spent, what we paid. So you notice we made a loss here because we paid more than what we got, which doesn't make any sense. But the reason for that is because of the rents. So we made profit in terms of what we charged the clients, but recall we paid 120. So because of the 120 we paid, that was a huge lump sum, and that's why we made a loss, because we spent more than we generated in that particular month. And the same way, if we go to our job sheets, what we spent was we spent 4,000. So 42,000 is what we spent in terms of labor, what we paid our employees, and our expenses 42 plus we equally spent here in December, the total cost. So that will be 42 plus 67,400 plus 120. So the total we spent here, that's for the 3 expenses, is 187,400. So 187,400 plus, if I go back to my job sheets, plus the 42,000. And if you add that together, that's what gives us in the report section, which is over 200. That's why we have a bit over 229,400. If you subtract the 2, we have this. Okay, so this will automatically aggregate for you across all of your projects, all of your employees for the entire calendar months. And we equally have a total profit chart here, so you can be able to see the months you made a profit. For instance, here you made 1,005, and the months you made a loss is indicated in red, equally indicated in red, so you can easily notice that this is a loss. And this is for multiple years. So later, if I change this to 2018, you notice everything goes to 0 because we don't have data for 2018. So you notice everything is 0, everything is 0. So the template will automatically extract only data you have from your projects, your job, and your expenses section. So going back to my reports, that's a summary of the template. So I've gone through all of the reports here. The first 4 are reports, while this last is a data entry field, but it couldn't fit the navigation pane, so it's placed here just to add your contractors. And lastly, we have the dashboard section. Now the dashboard section just shows you key metrics. So if I click on the dashboard, what it does is in the upper section, it tells you your quarterly totals. Now this is just useful once at the end of the quarter, so you can be able to know your first quarter. This is the total income, total expenses, total profits. Second quarter, third quarter for the current year. So we're currently in the year 2017, so this is going to show you 2017 data. The moment you enter 2018, this is going to show you the first quarter of 2018 and so on. So formulas have been added that they are dynamic for the current year. So at a point you can be able to know your fourth quarter was terrible, your first quarter was a bit okay. And below that, we have our expenses versus income chart. So you can be able to see the blue, which is for your expenses, and the green for your income. So you can see that you spent more in quarter 4 than you made. So this is quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and then quarter 4 went all the way down. And at the bottom here, we have a section where you can quickly get contact information for a particular customer. It tells you at the point in time total number of employees in your database, total number of contractors in your database. These 2 values will automatically update as you add more employees and more contractors. Next, if you want to quickly obtain the job title, the phone number, and the email of any of your workers, you first indicate the worker here. So if it's an employee, once you tap to the next field, it's going to display only employees. So once I click Rose Random, notice it's going to tell me Rose Random's job. She's a carpenter, and this is her phone number. If I change this to Trudy, it's going to tell me Trudy is a driver, and this is his phone number. So to automatically give you the contact details. If I change this from employee to contractor or to customer, it's going to list all customers I have. I have 2 customers. Once I click on Mary, it's going to tell me Mary's phone number and Mary's email address if it's stored in the database. The same way if I change this to contractor, and then I select a contractor, contractor 1 and 2, It's going to tell me the contractor is a welder. This is the phone number. If I go to contractor 2, it's going to tell me it's a cleaner. This is the phone number. So this is a quick way of getting the contact. For instance, if you want to make a quick call to a particular contractor, you simply come in here, select contractor, select the contractor here, and it's going to display the contact information. So that's a summary of the template. I'm going to go ahead and deliver this now. I apologize. I do know that this promise was made sometime last year, but I totally forgot about it. So the template now has been done. This is going to be delivered to your email address. Thanks, and do take care.